Okay, welcome to the second session of this three-session piece. Welcome to Jean-Ian and Anton from ESET, who will now talk to you about the modern attacks against Russian financial institutions.
All right.
Off you go.
Excellent. So, hi everyone. My name is Jean-Ian Boutin. I'm a malware researcher at ESET, and together with my colleague Anton Cherepanov, we will discuss on attacks that we've seen, that we researched, that were mounted against Russian financial institutions. And we've been researching malware that seeks financial gain for several years. And we've seen this big shift towards financial institutions, and this is what we wanted to talk about. And we had the same problems that Peter had with this shifting landscape, I would say, where what we thought was mostly regional, and that we were predicting that it would go to other regions of the world. Well, it actually happened in 2016 and with big news. So we will look at that after that, at the end of the presentation. So a couple of years ago, we started seeing all these different headlines. So here you see hackers using malware to steal money from financial institutions in Russia. Then we have attacks that were against ATM. So gangs of people that were just standing near an ATM and without even touching it were able to collect money because someone else was using malware to automatically dispense cash. And another attack we've seen is manipulation of the exchange rate of Ruble. And actually Anton will give you a lot more details about the specific attack, which is pretty dramatic. Another type of attack was done by this gang, so Core Metal, which is a rollback attack. They were able to control a processing card system, and using this control, they were able to go withdraw some money and then do a rollback on the transaction, so they could do it again over and over and over, and they were able to actually gain a lot of money out of this. So again, very sophisticated attacks. And finally, you have gangs that targeted a wide array of financial institutions in Russia and were able to gain a lot of money out of it. So it seemed at this point that we were seeing more and more financial institutions being targeted by these guys. And it seemed like, especially in Russia and neighboring countries, this is something that we were seeing, and it was becoming commonplace, basically. So one might wonder which group of people actually has the capacity to mount these type of attack, because they have to know very specialized tools that these banks are using and how the workers at the banks are operating. So I will showcase some of these groups here. Of course, the list is not extensive because there are other groups that we did not research, but these are the ones for which we have a good visibility. So the first one is Boutin. So this is a group that started their activities around 2014, and we actually published a blog post about them last April in 2015, and we actually coined the name. So for better or worse, this is our creation, I would say. So at the very beginning, they were mostly targeting businesses in Russia. So they were going after mostly accounting departments, trying to compromise systems from which they could do some wire transfers. And then after a while, we've seen them shift their focus. So instead of targeting businesses, they were going after financial institutions themselves. And it was quite easy to see it, in fact, because in their targeted attacks, they were using decoy documents. And as soon as they started targeting financial institutions, you could see this big shift in the decoy documents, where they were using documents coming out of Central Bank of Russia, let's say, or explaining different laws that were governing the financial institution. And there was a very good report written by Group IB that did forensic investigations on them, and they were able to tell that between August 2015 and April of 2016, these guys stole more than 25 million US dollars, which is like quite a big amount, right? The second group that you probably already heard of is the Cherepanov and NAC group. So these were profiled by two really important reports, one by Kaspersky and one by Fox IT and Group IB. And these guys have been around from 2013 and have been targeted a lot, the Russian financial institutions, doing the ATM acts that I explained briefly in the first few slides. using malware to actually automatically make an ATM dispense cash. So this is a very sophisticated group as well. And finally, the last group is Corco. So this group appeared in 2014, and they actually have their own botnet. So Corco is the name of the malware, and we published a blog post in 2014 about this piece of malware, but we didn't know at the time that it was used for such attacks. And these guys have mounted pretty attacks that were very effective and that were extraordinary, I would say. So there was one from the rollback attack, so the ones I discussed a bit previously, where they had accomplices that were able to roll back the transactions from ATM, but they were also able to modify the exchange rate of the ruble against the US dollars, and this is what Anton will discuss a bit later on. So of course you see that these guys have the necessary workforce to interact with systems that are not publicly available. So this is really a sign of the specialization of this group. So if we take a quick look at the similarities, all these groups we believe are different, so they're using the different type of malware, but they share some similarities. So in terms of specialization, this is a recurrent theme because like to be able to mount this type of attack, you really have to have skilled people with you, skilled criminals. The organization is quite similar as well, where you see different developers having responsibility for different modules. Their modus operandi is quite similar as well, where it's very similar to APT groups. So they will try to target specific people and then try to do lateral movement, behavioral study, trying to learn more about the environment and really compromise specific systems. They're all going for low-hanging fruits. So even though they are targeting these financial institutions, they are trying to go after systems that lack some authentication, let's say, or that should be isolated but are not. So they are really going for the low-hanging fruits in these institutions. They also share some technical similarities, so they have access to tools that are not widely available. So here one example is the NetTerrorist exploit kit. So this exploit kit is available to only a few, and we know that Bootstrap and Corco both were able to distribute their malware through NetTerrorist exploit kit, which shows that they have similar links in the underground. They were also using some compromised websites that were the same between the two groups. They were also using Microsoft Word Intruder, which is a kit that is able to build Microsoft Word exploiting different vulnerabilities. And they at the very beginning, only a few people had access to it, and these groups had. They are also using encryption to protect the most important part of their tools. So when they compromise the system, they will go and they will, if it's really interesting, they will install new specialized tool and usually custom tools for the victims. And they don't want this to be easily analyzed, so they will try to encrypt it using a system-specific key. So in the case of Bootstrap and Corco, they were using the hard drive serial number as a key. So if you're doing forensic evidence and you don't have access to the system, then of course it becomes very difficult to do it. And they're using a lot of off-the-shelf tools as well to make it more difficult to track them. So a lot of remote administrator-based tool, Mimikatz, pen tester tools like this. And this is something I want to show you. So here you can see PDB path. So there are different developers. You can see it by the different coding style that these guys use. And here you can see a PDB path that comes in several different tools that several groups were actually using. So this is interesting because it kind of ties them together. So here you can see that it's a local privilege exploit that Volodymyr_8, probably not his real name, or maybe it is, but this is one tool he wrote. Another tool we found is this one. BHO stands for Browser Helper Object. So this is a plugin for Internet Explorer. And the interesting thing in that case is that they were abusing, well, they repurposed a very well-known plugin by EFF, HTTPS Everywhere. So some of you might be aware of this plugin where if there is an HTTPS version of a site available, it will automatically redirect you to a URL. Well, they actually abuse that to make their victims go to different URLs that they intended to. And it was also bundling Mimikatz. So Mimikatz is a very popular tool in in pen testing, and cybercriminals are using it quite a lot. And it was packed in the resources and dropped on the system. And what it does is that it simply executes 2 simple commands. So it gains debug privileges, and then will try to scrape memory for logon passwords. So if some of you are not aware of Mimikatz, what it does is one of its functionalities is actually able to recover passwords from memory. So then you can reuse these account credentials to try to do some lateral movement. So these are the groups that we describe in the paper and that we know are still active. Of course, one notable group that we did not profile is the Lurk group. So they were arrested a couple of weeks ago, and they had also the capacity to build these attacks. So in terms of TTPs, it's very similar to more regular targeted attacks that we see from APT groups. So they will first try to find target selection, then send a spear-phishing email, usually with an attachment. If the guy double-clicks, then the system is compromised. Most of them have automatic tools to assess the value of a specific system. So they will try to find specific URLs that were accessed on the computer, or processes that are running on the computer, to know if they would be actually able to monetize this system. And the groups, most of them are using 2 types. So very targeted, sending spear-phishing email, let's say, like this one. So this is an example of a spear-phishing email that was sent to a bank employee in Russia. And this guy was actually the SWIFT administrator of his bank. And he received this email. And we know that these guys are after these type of systems, because once you get access to a computer that is able to make SWIFT transfers, of course, it's obvious that they are trying to abuse such systems. Other groups are using more of a shotgun approach. So I already told you that Corco grows their own botnet, and they then cherry pick the interesting systems out of it. Here what you see is a AmiAdmin website. So if some of you don't know this software, it's basically a remote administrator software. So it allows you to remotely control a computer. And this is a tool that is used by almost all these groups, because when a system is compromised, you can then log in and try to see what's in the system and then install additional tool. And this particular website, we discovered last year that it was distributing malware, but not only was it distributing malware, but it was distributing Bootstrap, as well as the Lurk downloader. And of course, not all people that will download this bundle is actually a good target for them. So they will have to cherry pick the ones that are the most valuable, but still it shows you the more of the shotgun approach of these groups. Once they're in, what they will try to do is really try to find the most valuable computers. So we see them trying to do lateral movement, try to get access to these systems that will allow them to make the transfer happen, or a system that will allow them to make financial gain. What I find really interesting is that most of these guys will lurk in the network for extensive period of time, and they will install tools that will allow them to know better the behavior of the victim. So they will try to see when he's working, to have his work habit, when he goes to lunch, and this is something that the Corco group has abused during this Ruble exchange rate manipulation. And they will also have systems, malware, to take screenshots or videos, because they usually have to interact with a piece of software that is not available to the general public. So some of them will have to learn how to use it through these tools. And finally, they try to compromise NeverObject systems. So what I mean by this is they're usually trying to go against the domain controllers to retrieve passwords and then do lateral movement, but also mail servers. So we know of a case where these groups was monitoring, especially the emails coming out of the IT department, trying to see if they were able to discover a breach and how they actually respond to this. So of course, this gives them a lot of information about how the company is reacting, and it helps them. And once they're done, they usually clean their traces. So what they will do, they will destroy evidence, they will destroy files, registry keys. Some of them will even go and override the MBR. So what you see here is an INSYS-packed malware that will only override the MBR. So this specific tool was used by the Bootstrap group, but Corco is also using it in other groups as well to try to wipe as much as possible the evidence. And actually, the Bootstrap group is going one step further and will show this to the user, which most of you, I guess, can't read. But what it says is that the computer had some hardware problem and that the user must reboot his system. So of course, if he does that, then what happens? The computer won't restart because the MBR is overwritten, and the most likely reaction will be to take the system to the IT department, which might re-image the old machine. What you get is nothing for forensic investigation. So targeted systems. So we already saw ATM hack. We will talk about the exchange rate, but they are going after other type of software as well. So this is a remote banking software. This one is from iBank. iBank2 software, and these are used by bank's customer to make all sort of banking operation. And we know that these systems are very interested, that these groups are interested by this system because the initial dropper will list all the processes that are currently running on the computer, and they're looking for these type of processes, so MMBank, B-Client, which are RBS from different banks. Another process I want to bring your attention to is this one, uarm.exe. And this is actually a software provided by the Central Bank of Russia. So this one, AWS-CBC. And what it does is it allows banks to transfer money between them. So these groups, when they found a system with this, they know that they have the possibility to attempt a fraudulent transfer. How this works is that they will queue up several transactions, then sign them, then process them all. So the fraudster will try to modify the content of these orders to either change the recipient account, let's say, or maybe add a new one. And the last system I want to talk about is money transfers. So they are also looking for processes like TransLink, which is a Western Union process. So I guess most of you is familiar with Western Union. It allows you to wire money to other people, and contact NGXC as well, which is a Russian equivalent. So they're also looking for these type of software that they can then abuse and try to make money out of. So, Anton.
In the beginning of 2014, together with Robert Wipovsky, we published a blog, and it was really first analysis of this malware. And as many sophisticated malware today, it has model architecture, and I'm gonna describe this model. So first model is core. Its main component is responsible for CNC communication, for making screenshot, for injecting other models to write processes. Next three models are dedicated to attack remote banking software like iBank or iFops, which is popular in Ukraine. And then monitor model that sends information what processes are running on infected computer. And then standard things like keylogger, remote administrator, two different models, VNC and AMI, and form grabbing and password serial for Boutin. But what makes this drawing interesting is that it's focused on trading software. So Corco has checks for whether specific software is installed on the system, on the infected system. So these checks, they made locally. So we know, we see what they are going after. As illustrated here, Corco is curious about trading systems. And after we published the blog, several months later, we discovered two new models. First model that was called Quick. It targeted Quick workstation. This is how it described it itself, software package for providing online access to exchange. This is a list of supported exchanges. This is how it looks like, standard trading thing. So second model that was discovered, it targets transact application, which is kind of similar, but coming from different vendor. And this is how it looks like. So important note here that these models are used to collect information. They store credentials, settings, balance, they not used to control software remotely. And let's move to Kazan. It's a Russian city that located in Tatarstan region, and it is where notorious Korkov case happened. So Korkov attackers compromised a computer which used as trading terminal in a Russian bank, and for the credit, forensic analysis was made by Group IB. So this terminal was infected for at least 6 months, and attackers, they learned everything to perform this attack. So before we start, I'm gonna explain you how to read candle chart. Okay. So there is 2 types of candlestick. Green, which means that price moved up in particular period, and red candle that which means that which indicates that price moved down. And there is body. It shows difference between opened and closed position, and there is shadow. It shows high or low that price able to achieve in that period. So it was Friday afternoon. Attackers knew that no one is using infected computer at the moment because operator usually had lunch at that time. And attackers started to perform trading operation on behalf of the bank. The attackers opened several positions for selling and also for buying dollars. These positions, they contain significant amount of dollars and rubles. And the result is on the slide. This chart shows Moscow exchange with time frame 1 hour. Financial instrument is US dollar and ruble pair. And so big red line shows us that price high was 66 rubles for a dollar, and price low shows that it was 55. It was price low at that time. At first view, attackers didn't gain any profit from this attack but imagine if you're a trader and you know that something like this will happen in advance, what you want to do? Maybe you want to buy dollars for 55 rubles, and then 5 minutes later you want to sell them for 66. So it is kind of different kind of attack. So it is not when, for example, money are gone because they transferred on different bank. Actually, money were used to buy and sell, but not for fair price or not for current price. And also, because money were used, bank lost $5 million in less than 15 minutes. And another thing I want to say that it is a reputation loss, because some traders don't believe in story with malware. And we believe that it is first known attack of this kind. So, Jayan?
All right, I'm back. Oh, excellent. So to wrap things up, as I said in the very beginning, when we wrote the paper, we were arguing that these regional attacks were deemed to expand to other parts of the world. Well, actually, it kind of made a big boom. I guess you guys all know about the different SWIFT compromises that occurred. So this headline back in April 2015, the Central Bank of Bangladesh got compromised. They were able to make several transfers using SWIFT. Most of them were recalled, but a large amount of money was sent to the Philippines. More than $80 million were lost, basically, which is a huge amount. And shortly after that, some people linked a tool that was used in this attack, allegedly used, and they linked it to the Soniac. And it's a general knowledge, I would say, that Soniac was linked to the North Korea. So the media took this and then they said, okay, North Korea is behind the Bangladesh hit. Then other media reported that it might be Chinese hackers. And then I also saw that it might be Russian hackers. Well, I don't know. I don't have the answer for you, and I doubt that Anton has it as well. But what I know is that definitely these type of attacks against financial institutions, the type of attacks we weren't seeing before, are now commonplace. And the last event I want to talk about is something that happened last July in Taiwan. So a group of people for 2 days were getting into First Bank in Taiwan near ATMs, and without interacting with the ATM, without inserting card, without touching it, they were able to withdraw more than $2 million in the course of 2 days. So I don't know if that rings a bell, but this is exactly the same type of attack that Carbonac was doing. And here you see the suspects that the Taiwanese police were looking for. There are Russian nationals, Latvian and Romanian nationals in there. They were able to catch some of them, but most of them flew away. And this just illustrates the fact that these gangs that were doing these attacks in Russia are now targeting all other regions that are likely to have maybe some problems in the security. So really, to sum it up, the key takeaways, really specialization. I think this is key because you have these groups that have highly skilled criminals that are able to interact with software that most of us don't know about, right? And most of them are exploiting weaknesses in these financial systems. What that means is that with correct security, like, most of these attacks could have been prevented. So if you have correct network separation, if you have a better authentication for the transfer, these are attacks that should be preventable. And finally, the expansion already happening. So for the better part of 2016, we see these attacks come up now and again. So thank you for your attention, and we're happy to take questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Looks like it was very informative. No questions? Nope.
Thank you.
There we go. We have one down here, right at the front. Yep.
That's for you, man. You answer.
Hi, thanks. It's a quick question, I believe. Have you seen any developments on the mobile malware side for those?
No.
Okay.
No, it's mostly compromising system and installing tools on them. On mobile, no, we don't have.
Yeah, because there are some mobile banking trojans, but I
Yes.
haven't seen them yet attacking the financial institutions themselves. So maybe it's a bit late.
So you're totally right that there exists a lot of mobile Trojan that will either try to make a transaction when on mobile banking, or will try to steal two-factor authentication. But I don't know, Anton, do you know?
No.
No. All right, thanks.
And we had another question back there.
The specialization that you're talking of here,
Yes.
do you have any insight into whether it reflects that some of the people involved in these crime groups may actually have some experience from working in the financial institutions that they're targeting, or at least ones that use the same software? Or does it reflect that they actually just have that much time on their hands that they can sit there and remotely monitor and work out what these systems do and what they have to do to fraudulently use them now that they've got control?
Yeah. So I believe there's a bit of both. So the tools we're seeing that are installed on the computer allows them to basically spy on their targets, right? So they would certainly be able to learn more about how they're using it and which software they're using and the type of transfer. So of course there's some part of that. Now, if they have insider information, I don't know. Like, I think this is definitely a possibility, but I have no indication that someone got hit with that. No. Anton neither. All right.
I think that's time. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Very informative speech.